The old VHS tape whirred softly as the machine pulled it inside, its static-filled screen flickering to life. For almost 20 years, Daniel Harper had avoided this dusty box in the attic, the one marked "Do Not Open, Summer 2005. His hands trembled, not from age, but from the unbearable weight of memory. Because inside that box were fragments of a life he once had, and a woman he had buried in his heart long ago. Her name was Evelyn, his wife, his everything. She had drowned in a storm that night, the night the river swallowed her whole. He had cried, he had mourned, he had even stood before her grave countless times, whispering words into the cold stone. And yet, as the tape began to play, he saw something that made the blood drain from his face. Evelyn's voice, her laugh, her living, breathing face filled the screen. It was not a memory. It was not the past. It was something different. Have you ever believed with absolute certainty that something was gone forever, only to feel a sudden crack in that certainty? And if that crack revealed not a dream, but a truth you were never meant to see, would you chase it, no matter the cost? For Daniel, the answer formed in a whisper only his soul could hear. Yes, he would chase it, even if it shattered him all over again. Daniel leaned closer to the screen, his heart pounding so hard he thought the neighbors might hear it. Evelyn was sitting in their old living room, the wallpaper exactly as it had been before the storm destroyed half the house. She looked directly into the camera, her eyes shimmering with a mixture of fear and urgency. "Daniel, if you're watching this, it means they've lied to you," her voice trembled. "It means I didn't die that night." Daniel froze. Every fiber of his being screamed against what he was hearing. For 20 years he had carried the weight of her death. For 20 years he had spoken to a gravestone that might have been empty all along. On the tape, Evelyn clutched something tightly in her hands, a letter worn and folded. Behind her, the faint hum of a generator could be heard. "This isn't safe for me. It won't be safe for you either. They'll come if they know you've seen this. But you have to find the truth, Daniel. Start where it ended. Start at the river." The screen went black. Daniel sat motionless, his breath shallow. The attic seemed smaller now, the shadows pressing closer around him. His rational mind tried to fight. It's a trick, a hallucination, maybe even a cruel joke left behind. But his heart whispered something else, something more dangerous. She's alive. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat by the kitchen table with a bottle of whiskey, staring at the tape rewound on the counter. The storm outside rattled the windows, and each rumble of thunder brought him back to the night Evelyn disappeared. He remembered the sheriff's report, body unrecoverable, presumed drowned. He remembered the closed casket funeral, insisted upon by officials because the remains were compromised. He remembered never truly seeing her again. Now, after 2 decades, he was left with one impossible thought. What if the truth had been stolen from me? As the days quietly slipped away, Daniel's obsession grew. He dug through old boxes of newspapers, finding articles about the flood that claimed Evelyn's life. Strangely, one report mentioned 2 unidentified women recovered from downstream, a detail he swore he had never seen before. The clipping was brief, tucked away in the back pages, almost as if someone had tried to bury it. Then, one evening, as the clock struck midnight, the phone rang. Daniel hadn't heard it ring like that in years, a long, dragging tone that echoed through the empty house. He answered with a trembling hand. At first, only silence. Then, a whisper. "Daniel, don't look for me." The line went dead. Daniel's knees buckled. He sank into the chair, gripping the receiver, his breath sharp and uneven. The voice, it was hers, older, tired, but undeniably Evelyn's. And yet, why would she tell him not to look? Who had kept her hidden all these years? The attic tape had been only the beginning. Now the past was clawing its way back, threatening to tear open every wound Daniel thought had healed. And for the first time in 20 years, he realized he wasn't just searching for a lost wife. He was stepping into a secret someone had killed to protect. Daniel awoke the next morning with the phone call still echoing in his ears. He hadn't dreamed it. The static, the pause, the whisper, every detail burned into his memory. He poured black coffee into a chipped mug. staring out at the river that ran just beyond the tree line, the river that had swallowed his life whole. For 20 years he had cursed it, avoided it, convinced himself it had taken Evelyn from him. But now it felt less like a grave and more like a doorway, one he had been too afraid to open. By noon, he drove into town, a place that looked the same on the surface but carried subtle changes: new storefronts, faded signs, strangers where familiar faces once lived. He stopped at the county records office, an old brick building with peeling paint and a dusty scent of forgotten files. "I need the reports from the flood of 2005, he said, his voice firmer than he felt. The clerk, a woman with gray hair pinned tightly behind her head, raised an eyebrow. "That was a long time ago." "I know, but I lost my wife in that storm." Something flickered in her expression, a hesitation quickly masked by formality. "Follow me?" She led him to a cramped archive room, where boxes were stacked floor to ceiling. Daniel sifted through brittle folders, scanning reports, rescue logs, autopsy notes. Most of it was familiar from years ago. But then he found it, a file labeled Unidentified Female Number 2. The description didn't match Evelyn, at least not completely. But there was something odd. The clothing listed in the report was hers. He remembered buying her that blue summer dress for their anniversary. His hand trembled as he touched the page, as if he could still feel her warmth in the fabric described. He closed the file quickly when the clerk's shadow stretched across the table. "Find what you were looking for?" she asked. Daniel forced a smile. Not yet. That night he drove out to the river. The moon painted the current silver, and the sound of rushing water filled the silence. He stood at the very spot where rescuers had once told him the river had claimed Evelyn. Suddenly headlights swept across him. A black sedan pulled up on the gravel road behind. The driver stepped out, tall, wearing a dark coat. Daniel's pulse quickened. "You should let the past rest, Mr. Harper," the man said, his voice low and controlled. Daniel stiffened. "Who are you?" The man ignored the question. "Digging into that night won't bring her back. Some truths only destroy." And before Daniel could respond, the man got back into the car and drove off, leaving only the dust and the echo of his words. Daniel's fists clenched. Every warning only deepened his certainty. Evelyn hadn't died that night. Someone had made sure he believed she had, and someone still wanted him blind. The days that followed became a haze of restless searching. Daniel returned to the tape again and again, studying every frame, every flicker, every detail in the background of Evelyn's recording. The more he watched, the more convinced he became that the video wasn't simply a farewell. It was a map, a breadcrumb trail hidden in plain sight. In the corner of the frame, behind Evelyn's shoulder, a calendar hung on the wall. He froze the image and leaned closer. August 2006, 1 year after she was declared dead. His breath caught. Whoever had filmed this tape, Evelyn was alive long after the storm. But where had she been? Who had kept her hidden? The questions circled in his mind like vultures. Each night, he drove out to the river, replaying the sheriff's words, the rescue reports, the man in the black sedan. The silence of the water gave him no answers, only more shadows. One evening, while sitting at a diner he hadn't visited in years, Daniel overheard two men talking in the booth behind him. Their voices were low, but one name cut through the air like a blade. Evelyn Harper? Daniel's chest tightened. He leaned closer without turning his head. They kept her in the compound up north. No one was supposed to know. "Quiet," the other man hissed. "You want to end up like Carter?" Their words faded as they stood and left. But Daniel's mind was already racing. A compound. North. Someone named Carter. He scribbled the fragments on a napkin, his hands shaking as though he were piecing together a forbidden puzzle. The next day, Daniel drove 2 hours north, following half-forgotten backroads until the landscape grew wild and empty. Pines closed in on either side, their branches heavy with silence. Then, through the trees, he saw it. A chain-link fence, topped with barbed wire, surrounding a cluster of abandoned buildings. He pulled the truck off the road and approached on foot. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and rust. Windows were boarded, but one door hung ajar. He slipped inside. The interior was stripped bare, but signs of habitation lingered. A metal cot bolted to the floor, empty cans stacked neatly in a corner, and etched into the wall, E.H. His fingers traced the initials, and for a moment the years collapsed. She had been here. She had carved herself into this place, desperate to be remembered. Daniel. The voice came from behind him. He spun, his heart hammering. A man stood in the shadows, his features sharp, his eyes calculating. Daniel recognized him instantly. It was the driver from the black sedan. "I warned you," the man said coldly. "You shouldn't have come." Daniel's throat tightened. "Where is she?" The man stepped closer, his tone almost pitying. "She's not yours to find anymore." Before Daniel could move, a heavy blow struck the back of his head. Darkness swallowed him whole. When he woke, Daniel was lying in the dirt, the taste of blood on his tongue. His truck was gone, his pockets emptied. The forest pressed in around him like a cage. Every muscle in his body ached, but one truth burned brighter than the pain. Someone was willing to hurt him to keep Evelyn hidden. Dragging himself to his feet, he stumbled back toward the road. The compound was no longer behind him, only endless trees, as if it had vanished into thin air. By the time he reached the nearest town, night had fallen. He checked into a motel under a false name. Convinced eyes were following him. Sleep came in fragments, broken by nightmares of Evelyn's face behind a wall of glass, reaching for him as strangers dragged her away. The following morning, he went to the library, combing through old local newspapers. It didn't take long before he found a small article about a man named Richard Carter, a government contractor who had gone missing in 2007. The words chilled him. Last seen investigating flood recovery operations in the Northern District. Daniel folded the article carefully. Carter hadn't simply disappeared. He had been silenced. And now Daniel understood the weight of the warning at the river. Some truths only destroy. But destruction didn't frighten him anymore. Not knowing did. And so he made a vow beneath the flickering motel light. He would find Evelyn, no matter who stood in his way. The motel room became Daniel's war room. He covered the desk with scraps of newspaper clippings, scribbled notes, and maps marked with circles and arrows. He barely ate, surviving on bitter coffee and the gnawing urgency that Evelyn was out there, waiting. At night, the silence pressed too heavily on him, and he found himself speaking aloud to her picture, an old photograph he carried in his wallet. "If you're alive, Evelyn, just hold on. I'm coming," his voice cracked. "I won't fail you this time." On the third night, a knock rattled the door. Daniel froze. Slowly, he reached for the small revolver he kept in his bag. "Mr. Key." "Harper?" a voice called softly. It was a woman's voice, hesitant, almost trembling. Daniel edged to the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, mid-40s, her face pale beneath the harsh light. She wasn't familiar, but her eyes, sharp, searching, met his even through the small glass. Against his better judgment, he cracked the door. "Who are you?" "My name is Claire," she whispered. "I knew Evelyn." The gun trembled in his hand. "That's impossible." "No," her voice broke. "I was with her. I was in the compound too." Daniel pulled her inside, locking the door behind them. Claire sank onto the edge of the bed, wringing her hands. "We weren't prisoners. Not exactly. We were test subjects. They told us it was for national security, flood recovery, environmental disasters, but it was lies. We were watched, controlled. Some of us died. Evelyn," she swallowed hard. "She fought them. She never stopped fighting." Daniel's chest tightened. "Where is she now?" Claire looked at him with haunted eyes. "Alive, but not safe. They moved her years ago. I escaped, but I never dared look for her. The ones who try don't survive." The memory of the black sedan, the man's warning, the blow to his head, it all pressed down on him, but his resolve only sharpened. "Then tell me where to start." Claire hesitated, then pulled a folded slip of paper from her pocket. On it was an address, scrawled in hurried ink. "There's a man named Whitaker. He worked inside the program before he turned against them. If anyone knows where Evelyn is, it's him, but he won't trust you. He doesn't trust anyone." Daniel tucked the paper into his jacket. "Then I'll make him trust me." The address led him to an abandoned gas station on the outskirts of another forgotten town. The windows were boarded, the pumps rusted and useless. Daniel stepped inside, his every sense on edge. "Whitaker?" he called. A shotgun clicked behind him. That depends who's asking." Daniel turned slowly. A man in his 60s stood there, grizzled and weary, the kind of man who looked like he hadn't slept in years. His eyes, however, burned with suspicion. "I'm looking for my wife," Daniel said carefully. "Her name is Evelyn Harper. She disappeared in 2005. I know she was alive after that. Claire sent me." At the mention of Claire, Whitaker's stance softened slightly. He lowered the gun, though he didn't put it down. "You shouldn't be here," Whitaker muttered. "If they know you're digging, you're already dead." Daniel stepped closer, his voice breaking. "I buried her once. I won't do it again without the truth. Please." The older man studied him, weighing something unseen. Then he gestured to a back room. "Come on, and keep your voice low." Inside, papers and photographs littered the walls, a conspiracy web stretching across yellowed maps and pinned documents. Daniel's eyes locked on one photograph, a blurry image of Evelyn, older, but unmistakably her, stepping into a black van guarded by armed men. His knees nearly gave way. "When was this taken?" he asked, his throat raw. 2012, Whitaker said. "She was being transferred from the compound you found to a more secure site." "Where?" Whitaker hesitated. "I don't know for sure, but I have a lead. A research facility in the mountains disguised as a weather station. No one comes out once they're in." Daniel felt both terror and hope course through him. For the first time in years, Evelyn wasn't just a ghost. She was somewhere, real, somewhere he could reach. Whitaker grabbed his arm. "Listen to me. If you go after her, you'll have to face what they turned her into. She's not the same woman you lost in that river." Daniel met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "She's my wife, and I'll face whatever she's become." That night, Daniel drove toward the mountains, the slip of paper burning in his pocket, the image of Evelyn seared into his mind. Snow began to fall as the road climbed higher, the world around him growing colder, darker. He knew the path ahead wasn't just dangerous, it was a descent into secrets men had killed to protect. But for the first time in 20 years, Daniel felt alive, because he wasn't chasing a memory anymore. He was chasing Evelyn. The mountain road narrowed into a single lane, twisting through dense forests that swallowed the headlights. Daniel gripped the wheel tightly, his breath fogging in the icy air. Snow fell heavier now, blinding flakes battering against the windshield. It was as if the world itself wanted to bury him before he reached the truth. By dawn, his truck coughed and sputtered in the cold, forcing him to pull off onto a frozen turnout. He wrapped himself in his coat and trudged forward on foot, boots crunching against the snow. Each step carried him higher into the mountains, closer to whatever fate awaited him. Then, through the mist, he saw it. A tall chain-link fence crowned with barbed wire, stretching across a plateau. Beyond it, squat gray buildings rose against the backdrop of white peaks. The place looked lifeless, but Daniel knew better. Life was inside, hidden, controlled. Evelyn was inside. He crouched low, scanning the perimeter. Guards patrolled in heavy coats, rifles slung over their shoulders. Surveillance cameras rotated silently on posts. This was no weather station. It was a fortress. Daniel's stomach twisted. He had no plan, no weapons beyond the revolver in his coat, but his determination was sharper than any blade. He studied the fence until he spotted a drainage tunnel half buried in snow. Dropping to his knees, he crawled through the narrow opening, icy water soaking his hands. The tunnel spat him out into a dark culvert beneath the facility. He climbed up, pressing himself against the wall, listening. Footsteps echoed faintly above. He waited until silence returned, then slipped through a maintenance door into the bowels of the building. The air inside was sterile, humming with fluorescent lights. Daniel moved cautiously down the corridor, heart pounding, every muscle taut with fear. A voice stopped him. "Subject Harper scheduled for transfer." Daniel froze. He pressed himself against the wall near a partially open door. Inside, two men in lab coats studied a clipboard. 20 years of containment, one muttered. "It's a miracle she's still stable." "Miracle?" the other scoffed. "It's the program. She's the last success we have left." Daniel's hands shook. Evelyn, alive, here, still a subject. He waited until the men left, then slipped inside. The room was lined with filing cabinets and computer monitors, all humming with data. He rifled through the drawers, searching desperately until he found it. A file marked E. Harper. He flipped it open, his throat constricted. Inside were photographs of Evelyn over the years, some grainy surveillance stills, others clinical shots under harsh lighting. Her hair had grown streaks of gray, her eyes sharper, colder. Notes filled the margins: resilient, resistant, key to long-term adaptation protocols. Daniel slammed the file shut, fighting the urge to cry out. They hadn't just kept her, they had studied her, twisted her life into data and experiments. A noise behind him made him spin. "Daniel?" The file slipped from his hands. The voice, soft, trembling, achingly familiar, cut through him. He turned slowly. She stood in the doorway. Evelyn, older, thinner, her face marked by years he hadn't shared with her. But her eyes were the same. For a long moment neither moved. Then she whispered, "You shouldn't have come." Tears blurred his vision. "Evelyn, it's me." She shook her head, stepping back. "They'll kill you if they know you're here." "I don't care." His voice broke. "I thought you were gone. I buried you. And all this time—" He choked on the words. Her lips trembled. For an instant, he saw the woman he had lost. The woman who had once danced barefoot in their kitchen, who had laughed under the summer sun. But then her gaze hardened. "You don't understand, Daniel. I can't leave." His heart shattered. "Why?" "Because if I do, they'll destroy everything. And maybe me with it." Footsteps thundered down the hall. Evelyn's eyes widened. She shoved him into a storage closet, her hands cold against his chest. "Stay quiet," she whispered. "If they find you—" The door slammed shut. Daniel pressed his ear against it, hearing soldiers rush past. His breath came fast and shallow, but one truth consumed him. Evelyn was alive, and she was here. But she wasn't free. Not yet. Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs in the suffocating darkness of the storage closet. His palms were damp, his breath short and uneven. He pressed his ear against the thin metal door, straining to hear past the blood rushing in his head. The footsteps outside slowed, voices murmuring, boots clicking on the sterile floor. Then silence. He waited a full minute before daring to move. His hand hovered over the knob, but the echo of Evelyn's voice held him frozen. "You don't understand, Daniel. I can't leave." The words replayed again and again. He had imagined this moment for 2 decades, rehearsed what he would say, how he would hold her if he ever saw her again. But in every fantasy she had wanted to come home. None of those daydreams had prepared him for her rejection. Finally, the handle turned from the outside. The door creaked open, and Evelyn slipped inside, closing it quickly behind her. The faint overhead light caught the sharp lines of her face, revealing both her age and the hard years written into her skin. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel whispered, "Evelyn, I don't care what they've done. I don't care how much time has passed. I just want you back." Her eyes glistened, but she shook her head. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" He reached for her hand, but she pulled it back, retreating into the corner like a shadow. "Because I'm not the same person you lost," she said, her voice low, trembling. "They changed me, Daniel. They broke me down, rebuilt me, tested me. For years I was nothing but a number in their files. If I step outside this place, I'm not your Evelyn anymore. I'm a weapon they'll never let go." Daniel's throat closed around his words. "You're still you. I can see it in your eyes." Her lips quivered, but she forced steel into her voice. "You don't understand. I've done things I can't erase, things they made me do." Daniel cupped her face, gently this time, forcing her to meet his gaze. "I don't care what they made you do. You are not their weapon. You are my wife, and I will burn this place to the ground if that's what it takes to bring you home." A tear slipped down her cheek. For the briefest moment she leaned into his touch, her body trembling. Then she stepped back abruptly, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "You don't know what you're asking," she whispered. "I know exactly what I'm asking," Daniel said. "A second chance." Before Evelyn could answer, alarms blared through the facility. Red lights flashed, bathing the corridor in pulses of crimson. A mechanical voice echoed overhead. "Containment breach. All personnel to secure stations." Evelyn's face drained of color. "They know you're here." Daniel grabbed her hand. This time she didn't pull away. They slipped out of the closet and into the chaos of the corridor. Guards sprinted past, rifles raised, radios crackling with urgent orders. Evelyn tugged him down a side hallway, moving with precision, as if she had memorized every inch of the facility. "How do you know where we're going?" Daniel asked, his breath ragged. "I've been here long enough," she said. "There's a service exit near the lower labs. If we're lucky, we can reach it before they lock down the perimeter." But as they turned a corner, two soldiers blocked their path. Evelyn reacted first, faster than Daniel could comprehend. She lunged, striking one in the throat and twisting his rifle away in a single fluid motion. The second man raised his weapon, but Evelyn fired, the shot echoing down the hall. He dropped instantly. Daniel stared, stunned. "My God!" Evelyn's chest heaved, her hand shaking only slightly as she lowered the rifle. "Now you understand." He swallowed hard, forcing himself to look past the bodies. "Then, we use what they gave you, to take you back." They ran, Evelyn leading him through sterile corridors that seemed endless. Doors slammed shut around them as the lockdown spread, heavy metal barriers descending with mechanical groans. Twice they barely slid through before the gate sealed tight behind them. Finally, they reached a wide chamber humming with machinery. Evelyn darted to a control panel, typing furiously on the keys. "What are you doing?" Daniel asked. "Buying us time." The alarms shifted pitch. Somewhere above, locks disengaged with a thunderous clang. Evelyn grabbed his arm. "Move!" They burst into a stairwell spiraling downward. The deeper they descended, the colder the air grew. Pipes hissed, steam fogging the walls. At the bottom, a reinforced door waited. Evelyn swiped a card from her pocket, and to Daniel's shock, it opened. "You still have clearance?" he asked. "I was never a prisoner here," she said grimly. "Not in the way you think. I was their project. They wanted me to stay." The door opened into a cavernous loading bay. Snow swirled in through an open gate, the outside world a storm of white. Daniel's chest swelled with desperate hope. They were close, but then the shadows moved. Dozens of soldiers flooded the bay, rifles raised, lasers painting their chests, and at the front stood the man Daniel had seen before, the driver of the black sedan. His coat was immaculate, his expression calm, almost disappointed. "Mr. Harper," he said smoothly, "you really don't know when to stop." Evelyn stepped in front of Daniel, the stolen rifle raised. "If you want him, you'll have to go through me." The man smiled faintly. "Always the fighter. But you belong here, Evelyn." "You know that." Her finger tightened on the trigger. "Not anymore." The standoff stretched, every breath drawn tight like a wire about to snap. Then Daniel noticed something. The soldiers weren't advancing. They were waiting. For what? The answer came from above. A deafening roar split the air as a helicopter descended into the bay, its floodlights blinding. Wind blasted across the concrete, whipping snow and debris into a frenzy. From the open door of the chopper, a voice barked orders. "Stand down! We're taking her alive!" Daniel's blood ran cold. The soldiers hadn't been sent to kill Evelyn. They had been sent to capture her. Evelyn's eyes darted to Daniel's, wide with desperation. "Run!" she screamed. But Daniel didn't run. He charged forward, grabbing her arm, pulling her toward the storm outside. Bullets cracked against the walls, sparks flying, concrete chipping. The helicopter shifted, its rotor wash throwing them off balance. Daniel dragged Evelyn through the chaos, their bodies slamming against crates and barrels. At the edge of the bay, an armored truck sat idling, its keys in the ignition. Without hesitation, he shoved her inside and climbed behind the wheel. The engine roared to life. Soldiers shouted, rifles spitting fire. Glass shattered as bullets tore through the cab. Daniel slammed his foot on the gas, the truck lurching forward. The impact of steel against steel echoed as they crashed through the outer gate, snow exploding around them. The truck fish-tailed wildly on the icy road, but Daniel held tight, eyes fixed on the narrow path leading into the storm. Behind them, the helicopter gave chase, its spotlight cutting through the darkness. Evelyn clutched the dash, her face pale. "You don't know what you've started," she shouted over the roar. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we'll finish it together." The chase tore down the mountainside, headlights and floodlights piercing the storm, engines roaring like predators in the night. For the first time in 2 decades, Daniel wasn't chasing Evelyn anymore. Now they were running side by side. Snow whipped across the windshield, erasing the road in blinding waves. The truck roared down the mountainside, tires skidding on ice, metal groaning with every sharp turn. Daniel's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, sweat stinging his eyes despite the cold. Behind them, the helicopter's spotlight cut through the storm like an unblinking eye. Its rotor thunder rattled Daniel's chest, each pulse reminding him that they were prey being hunted. Evelyn gripped the dash with one hand, the rifle with the other. Her breathing was fast, uneven, but her voice when it came was steel. "Faster, Daniel. They won't stop until we're dead. Or worse." The words carried a weight that sank into Daniel's bones. He had heard fear in her voice before, years ago during storms, but this wasn't fear. It was knowledge. She knew what capture meant. Bullets sparked against the tailgate. Daniel jerked the wheel, sending the truck swerving dangerously close to the cliff's edge. Snow and rock tumbled into the abyss. Evelyn's hand shot out, bracing against his arm. "Don't kill us before they do," she snapped. Daniel gritted his teeth. "You trust me to find you after 20 years. Trust me to get us out now." For a moment her eyes softened, as if the storm outside faded, and she was looking at the man she remembered. But then the chopper's machine gun opened fire, shredding the road ahead. Daniel slammed the brakes, the truck fishtailing, skidding sideways before he regained control. He spotted a narrow logging road veering off to the right, half buried in snow. Without thinking, he yanked the wheel. The truck crashed through a barrier of branches, plunging into the thick forest. The canopy swallowed them, hiding them from the helicopter's spotlight. For a few blessed seconds, only the roar of the engine and the crunch of snow under tires filled the cab. Evelyn exhaled, clutching the rifle tightly to her chest. "They won't lose us that easily. They'll deploy ground teams. We have minutes, maybe less." Daniel's eyes darted between the road and her. "Then tell me what they've been doing to you. Tell me why you said you can't leave." Her jaw clenched. "Now isn't the time." "It's the only time we have," he shot back. "If I'm going to keep you alive, I need to know what they've turned you into." Her silence was louder than the storm. Finally, she whispered, "They called it the Flood Adaptation Program. They said the world was changing, that future disasters would wipe out millions. They wanted to create survivors, people who could endure anything. Drought, famine, poison, even drowning." Daniel's stomach twisted. "You mean experiments?" Her gaze dropped. "Endless experiments, pain, isolation. I wasn't the only one, Daniel, but I was the only one who survived." The words sank into him like ice water. He wanted to hold her, to promise her none of it mattered now. But before he could speak, headlights flared in the rearview mirror. Black SUVs tore down the logging road behind them, engines snarling. "Brace yourself!" Daniel shouted. The first SUV rammed their bumper. The truck jolted violently, metal screaming. Evelyn spun, firing through the shattered rear window. One SUV swerved, its tire exploding, flipping it into the trees in a shower of sparks. The second rammed harder, pushing them toward a ravine where the road crumbled into nothing. Snow sprayed as tires spun helplessly close to the edge. Daniel floored the gas. The engine howled, fighting gravity. The truck lunged forward, barely regaining traction. Evelyn fired again, this time hitting the driver of the second SUV. The vehicle veered, slammed into a tree, and exploded in a flash of fire. The blast lit up Evelyn's face, and for an instant Daniel saw the fury carved into her features, a rage born of 2 decades stolen. More headlights appeared behind. Too many? Daniel's gut sank. "We can't outrun them all," Evelyn said flatly. "Not like this." Daniel's grip tightened on the wheel. "Then, what do you suggest?" Her eyes flicked toward him, and for the first time, he saw hesitation, fear. "If they catch me, if it looks like you'll lose me again, you have to promise me something." "No," Daniel snapped. "You don't even know what I'm going to say." "I don't care," he growled. "I didn't crawl through 20 years of hell to find you just to lose you again. Don't you dare ask me to let you go." Her lips parted, but whatever she meant to say was drowned by the roar of the helicopter as it reappeared overhead, spotlight slicing through the trees. Evelyn's jaw set. "Then drive." The logging road ended abruptly in a clearing where the forest opened into a frozen lake. The surface gleamed under the moonlight, half covered in snow. Daniel slammed the brakes, tires skidding to the edge. Behind them, SUVs spilled into the clearing, engines growling, soldiers pouring out with rifles raised. The helicopter hovered above, the downdraft whipping snow into blizzards. They were surrounded. Daniel's chest heaved. He glanced at Evelyn, who sat unnervingly calm, rifle across her lap. "What now?" he asked. Her eyes were distant, unreadable. "Now you see why I told you not to come." Daniel shook his head violently. No, we fight our way out. Together." A soldier with a megaphone stepped forward, voice booming over the storm. "Daniel Harper, surrender now. Hand over Subject Harper, and you will be spared." Daniel's blood boiled. "Subject Harper," he spat. "You're not their subject. You're my wife." Evelyn turned to him slowly. "Daniel, if you love me, you have to let me end this my way." Before he could respond, gunfire erupted. Bullets shattered the truck's windows, sparks dancing across the hood. Daniel ducked, shielding Evelyn instinctively. "Go!" she shouted, shoving open her door. "Run for the trees!" "I'm not leaving you." But she was already out, moving with inhuman speed, rolling across the ice, rifle blazing. Soldiers dropped one by one, their cries drowned by the storm. Evelyn moved like a ghost, every motion precise, merciless. Daniel stared, torn between awe and horror. "What have they done to you?" He forced himself into motion, crawling out of the cab and sprinting toward her. Together they dove behind a fallen log, bullets splintering the wood around them. Evelyn slammed a fresh magazine into her rifle, breathing hard. "You shouldn't see me like this," she said, voice hoarse. Daniel grabbed her hand, squeezing it tight. "I don't care what you've become. I came for you, and I'm not leaving without you." Her eyes locked on his. For a heartbeat, everything else disappeared. The gunfire, the storm, the years lost. It was just them, together again. Then the helicopter's searchlight blinded them. A voice bellowed from above. "Take her alive. Kill the man." Evelyn's face went pale. She shoved Daniel hard. "Run!" But Daniel didn't run. He raised his revolver, aiming at the helicopter, and fired. The shot was hopeless, swallowed by the storm, but in that single act of defiance, he felt something he hadn't in years. Power. The soldiers advanced, tightening the noose. Evelyn screamed his name, and the night exploded in fire. The explosion ripped through the night, a ball of fire blooming in the distance where one of the SUVs had been. The blast sent shockwaves across the frozen lake, cracks spiderwebbing beneath the thin ice. Soldiers staggered, momentarily blinded by the light and deafened by the thunderous roar. Daniel blinked against the searing brightness, his ears ringing. Evelyn seized the moment, pulling him to his feet. "Move!" she shouted, her voice ragged but strong. They sprinted across the ice, boots slipping on the slick surface. Behind them, chaos reigned. Shouts, gunfire, the helicopter banking hard to avoid the rising column of flame. Daniel didn't dare look back. His entire focus was on Evelyn's hand gripping his, on the impossible reality that after 20 years, they were running together again. But the ice groaned ominously beneath their weight. A crack opened near Daniel's foot, water surging upward. He stumbled, nearly dragging Evelyn down with him. She yanked him upright, her face tight with urgency. "This way!" she cried, veering toward the tree line at the far end of the lake. Bullets sparked against the ice, spraying shards of frozen water into the air. Daniel's lungs burned, every breath a knife of cold. The forest seemed impossibly far. The helicopter swooped lower, its spotlight locking onto them again. The downdraft sent waves rippling through the ice, widening the cracks. Evelyn skidded to a halt, raising her rifle. She fired upward, bullets hammering against the chopper's hull. The machine tilted, pulling away momentarily, but it would be back. "Go!" she screamed. Daniel grabbed her arm. "Not without you." They reached the tree line just as the ice gave way behind them, a jagged maw swallowing one of the pursuing soldiers. His scream was cut short as the black water closed over him. The others hesitated, buying Evelyn and Daniel precious seconds. They plunged into the forest, branches whipping their faces, snow clawing at their legs. The sounds of pursuit followed, engines revving, boots crunching, radios crackling. Finally, they stumbled into a hollow beneath a cluster of pines. Evelyn collapsed against the trunk, her chest heaving. Daniel crouched beside her, his body trembling with exhaustion. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was their ragged breathing and the distant thrum of the helicopter circling overhead. Then Evelyn whispered, "You shouldn't have come for me." Daniel turned to her sharply. "Don't say that." Her eyes glistened, haunted. "You don't understand what they've done. I'm not just someone who survived the flood, Daniel. I'm what they created out of it. And they'll never stop hunting me, not until I'm dead or back in their cages." Daniel cupped her face, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Then let them hunt. I won't let them take you again. Not ever." She shook her head, tears spilling now. "You don't know what it cost me to stay alive." "Then tell me," he said softly. "Tell me everything." And there in the frozen silence of the forest, Evelyn finally broke. Her voice trembled as she recounted years of torment, the experiments that pushed her body past its limits, the endless tests of endurance, the nights she lay awake in a sterile cell, praying Daniel had found peace without her. She spoke of the others who hadn't survived, names she still whispered to herself so they wouldn't be forgotten. And finally she confessed the darkest truth. "They used me, Daniel. Sent me into disasters staged to look natural, floods, fires, quarantines. I did things, helped them cover things that haunt me. I'm not the woman you buried. I'm something else now, something broken." Daniel pulled her against him, wrapping her trembling frame in his arms. "You're not broken. You're here. That's all that matters." For a long time she clung to him, as if afraid he would vanish like a dream. But their moment was shattered by the crunch of boots nearby. Voices called through the forest. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Evelyn pulled away, her face hardening again. "We can't keep running. Not forever." "Then what?" Daniel asked. She met his eyes, resolve burning in her gaze. "We end this. Tonight." They moved deeper into the woods until they found an abandoned ranger station, its windows shattered, roof sagging under years of snow. Inside, Evelyn scavenged supplies, maps, flares, an old first aid kit, while Daniel checked the revolver and ammunition they still had. "We can't take on an army," he said grimly. "We don't need to," Evelyn replied. "We just need to cut off the head." Daniel frowned. "The man in the black coat?" Her jaw tightened. "His name is Colonel Vance. He was the one who designed the program, the one who told me, the night they dragged me out of the river, that my life as Evelyn Harper was over." Daniel's fists clenched. "Then he dies tonight." Evelyn's eyes flickered. Grief, rage, and something else Daniel couldn't name. "If we can take him out, the chain of command collapses, the hunters scatter. It won't end the program, but it will buy us time, maybe even freedom." Daniel stepped closer, gripping her shoulders. "Then we do it together." Hours later, they lay hidden on a ridge overlooking the facility. The storm had cleared, leaving the mountains sharp and merciless under the stars. Below, floodlights bathed the compound in harsh white, soldiers patrolling in tight formations. And there, near the command center, stood Vance, barking orders, his coat immaculate, even in the cold. Evelyn's breath trembled as she sighted him through the scope of her rifle. "One shot," she whispered. Daniel placed a hand over hers. "No, we do this face to face." She turned to him, startled. "Why?" "Because he took everything from us," Daniel said, his voice low and steady. "I want him to look me in the eye when it ends." Evelyn searched his face, then nodded slowly. Together they descended into the valley, slipping past patrols, moving like shadows. For the first time, Daniel felt the weight of their years apart transform into strength, their survival, their pain, their love fueling every step. They reached the command center undetected, slipping inside through a maintenance door. The halls were quiet, eerily so. Evelyn led the way, every turn of the corridor etched into her memory. Finally, they entered a wide office lined with monitors, and there he was, Colonel Vance, standing at the window, hands clasped behind his back. He didn't turn when the door opened. "I wondered when you'd come," he said calmly. Evelyn raised her rifle, fury in her voice. "It ends tonight, Vance." At last he turned, his face lined with age, but his eyes sharp as ever. He smiled faintly. "No, Evelyn, it doesn't end. Not for you. You were made for this. You are this. And he," his gaze flicked to Daniel, "is just a relic of the life you've already lost." Daniel stepped forward, revolver raised. "Then let this relic show you how it ends." Vance chuckled softly. "Do you really think you can kill me and walk away? The program is bigger than me. Bigger than both of you. Maybe, Daniel said, but you won't live to see it. For a moment, the three of them stood locked in silence, past and present, colliding in one suffocating room. Then Evelyn's finger tightened on the trigger, but Vance was faster. His hand shot to a concealed pistol, firing once. Evelyn gasped, stumbling backward, blood blooming across her side. Daniel roared, lunging forward, his revolver cracking. The bullet struck Vance square in the chest, hurling him against the wall. His smile faltered, blood spilling from his lips. He sank to the floor, eyes still burning with defiance, even as the light faded. Daniel dropped to his knees beside Evelyn, cradling her trembling body. "Stay with me," he begged, pressing his hand to the wound. "Please, Evelyn, stay with me." Her eyes fluttered. Pain etched deep, but her hand found his. "I told you, I wasn't the same anymore." "You're still mine," Daniel whispered fiercely, "and I'm not losing you again." Sirens blared outside, soldiers shouting in confusion. Without Vance, the chain of command fractured. The facility was unraveling around them. Daniel lifted Evelyn into his arms, her weight both fragile and unbreakable. He carried her through the collapsing chaos, through smoke and gunfire, through the storm that had haunted them for 20 years. And as they disappeared into the forest once more, one truth burned brighter than the rest. The fight was far from over, but they would face it together. Snow fell silently through the canopy as Daniel stumbled deeper into the forest, Evelyn limp in his arms. Each breath burned his lungs. Each step was a battle against exhaustion, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. The faint warmth of her body against his chest was the only anchor keeping him moving through the black wilderness. Behind them, the compound burned. Flames licked at the sky, red against the white mountains, smoke curling upward like the ghost of 2 lost decades. Alarms wailed faintly in the distance, but the sound grew weaker with every step Daniel took. Finally, he reached a cave hidden in the slope of a ridge. He laid Evelyn down gently on a bed of pine needles, his hands trembling as he checked her wound. The bullet had torn through her side, blood soaking her shirt. "Stay with me," Daniel whispered, his voice cracking. "Don't you dare leave me again." Evelyn's eyes fluttered open, glassy with pain. She managed a faint smile. "You always were stubborn." He tore strips from his coat, pressing them against the wound, fighting to keep her conscious. "We're going to get out of here. We'll find a town, a doctor, someone who can help." Her hand found his wrist, weak but insistent. "No hospitals, no doctors. If they find me there, it all starts again." Daniel's throat tightened. "Then what am I supposed to do? Just watch you fade away?" Her eyes glistened with tears. "You found me, Daniel, after all these years. That's enough." "No," he said fiercely, his forehead pressing to hers. "It's not enough. Not anymore. We've lost too much time already." For a moment, silence filled the cave, broken only by the storm outside. Then Evelyn whispered, "Hold me, just hold me." And so he did. Through the night, as the fire he built crackled weakly as the cold pressed in from every side, Daniel held her. He whispered fragments of the life they once had, the smell of summer rain, the nights they danced in the kitchen, the dreams they never got to live. He told her everything, as if words could stitch back the years stolen from them. When dawn broke, pale light seeping into the cave, Evelyn stirred. Her breathing was shallow, but her eyes held a strength Daniel hadn't seen in years. "They'll come again," she said softly. "They always do." "Let them," Daniel replied. "I'm not afraid anymore." "No," but Evelyn shook her head. "You should be. They won't stop until they erase every trace of me. And you're part of me now. That puts you in their crosshairs." Daniel brushed the hair from her face. "Then we'll run. Not from them, from the world. We'll vanish, just you and me." A faint smile touched her lips. Always the dreamer. But before he could answer, voices echoed faintly through the forest. The crunch of boots, the hum of drones. They were already closing in. Daniel's stomach clenched. He grabbed the rifle, checked the revolver, and looked at Evelyn. "Can you walk?" She nodded weakly, determination burning through the pain. With his arm around her, they staggered out of the cave, into the biting wind of the morning. The forest ahead stretched endless and unforgiving, but it was their only chance. By noon, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. The hunters were relentless, black shapes moving between the trees, their radios crackling like insects. Daniel and Evelyn pushed on, exhaustion clawing at their bodies until they stumbled upon the ruins of an old mining town. Shattered buildings leaned against each other, roofs caved in, windows gaping like hollow eyes. "This is it," Evelyn whispered. "Our last stand." Daniel tightened his grip on her. "Don't talk like that. We'll make it through." But Evelyn's gaze was steady. "No, we end it here, one way or another." They ducked inside the remains of a church. Its steeple collapsed. The pews rotted. Daniel barred the door with a broken beam while Evelyn took position at a cracked window. Together, they prepared for the inevitable. When the soldiers came, they came hard. Gunfire shattered the silence, bullets splintering the wooden walls. Daniel fired through the cracks, each shot fueled by 20 years of rage. Evelyn, despite her wound, moved with precision, dropping enemies with every pull of the trigger. But there were too many. Smoke filled the church, choking the air. Daniel reloaded desperately, his hands slick with sweat and blood. Evelyn slumped against the wall, pale, her breaths ragged. "Go," she whispered. "Run while you can." Daniel dropped beside her, gripping her hand. "I'm not leaving you." Tears slid down her cheeks. "Then, at least let me finish this. For both of us." She pulled a grenade from her pocket, one she must have taken from the compound. She held it up, her eyes fierce. "If they want me back, they'll take me in pieces." Daniel's heart shattered. "No, there has to be another way." Her gaze softened, love breaking through the pain. "You gave me 20 years back tonight, Daniel. Don't let them take them away again." Before he could stop her, she pulled the pin. The world went white. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was lying in the snow outside the ruins. The church was gone, nothing but fire and splintered wood. Bodies lay scattered, smoke curling into the sky. He staggered to his feet, ears ringing, his body screaming with pain. "Evelyn!" he cried, his voice raw. But there was no answer, only silence, heavy and absolute. He stumbled through the wreckage, calling her name again and again until his voice broke. At last he fell to his knees, snow soaking his clothes, the weight of loss crashing over him like the river that had taken her once before. This time he had no grave to visit, no stone to speak to, only ashes and silence. And yet, as the wind swept through the ruins, he heard it, faint, fragile, a whisper. "Daniel." He turned wildly, heart pounding. For an instant he thought he saw her, a figure in the smoke, her hair drifting in the wind, her eyes meeting his. Then she was gone. Whether it was a vision, a memory, or something more, Daniel didn't know. But he rose, staggering away from the ruins, carrying her with him in the only way he could now. Inside. The world would never give them peace, but Evelyn Harper was no longer a ghost. She was a fire that no storm could drown. And Daniel would keep running, not from the hunters, not from the past, but with her voice echoing in his heart forever. Did you enjoy this story? Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Enjoy and comment below about your experience listening to this story.